everybody to another coding tutorial of Coding Cleverly. So today's 36th video is going to be about pure virtual functions in C++. In the last video, as a recap, we talked about pure virtual functions and abstract classes, and that there's going to be a card on the top right corner, so you could just click that card and watch that video so that you could have an understanding of what virtual functions and abstract classes are, and that type of concept will be implemented in today's video. So virtual functions is something like which have no proper implementation in the base class, and that type of implementation is not needed. And when we derive a class and we inherit it, we don't basically have that same type of implementation, but we change it up, we vary it, and then we inherit it by doing something different. And that type of concept was applied in function overriding, which is also shown as a card in the top right corner. So these two concepts are applied, and that is what basically sums it up. So what pure virtual functions are is that a pure virtual function is a virtual function in C++ for which we need not to write any function definition. Any kind of implementation is not needed, and only we have to declare it. And this is what's difference between a virtual function and a pure virtual function. In a virtual function, I haven't basically implemented it. I just wrote curly braces and then nothing in the inside of that. So it is declared by assigning 0 in the declaration, and basically we don't have to even implement it, and we just have to declare it, no definition, in the base class. An abstract class is a class in C++ which have at least one pure virtual function. So basically one abstract class is defined as that type of class in which there's at least one pure virtual function or at least one virtual function. And those classes that are derived from the abstract class, if they're not overridden, they're also known as abstract classes. So let's go in our dev C++ editor, and I'm just going to start writing code. So I encourage you to type along with me. So let me include my namespace standard. And then I'm going to include my main. And also I'm going to introduce my return 0. So after this, what I want here is I want to hypothetically create a class. So I would create a class and I would call this as Pokemon. And this is basically my base class. So I would say over here in the public section, because in default we have a private section. So in the public section, I would create a function. So what I would create is a void, and I would say attack. Because basically what I want to do is that I want to create a base class. So you could see over here, this is my base class, and I want to create a derived class. So I would create a derived class here. And basically what I want to do is, first thing is that I created this Pokemon class, which is my base class, and I want to create an object in my derived class, which is going to be some type of Pokemon name. And then what it will do is that it will have some specific attack, but the Pokemon base class itself doesn't have any proper implementation for attack. So what I do is just create a pure virtual function. So what I do is I create this parentheses, but I don't define it, I declare it. So how I'm just basically equaling it to 0. So this is our concept, and before this we prepend it with the keyword virtual. So this case, the compiler knows that we defined a pure virtual function. So I would just put in comments, I would say this is a pure virtual function. And now what we do in the derived class, we create another class, and this class will be called, let's say we have a class named Infernape. So I would say capital I-N Fernape. So Infernape is a Pokemon, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically inherit it. So I would put the colon, and then I would say publicly inherited from the Pokemon class. So this is my Pokemon class, I publicly inherited it. Now I will have a public section here, and I would create that same kind of function. But what I do is now I just, instead of writing virtual, I would just do void attack, and the same thing as it goes over there. Now you would see that this is the concept of function overriding. This attack over here is the same kind of signature what was done here, but there's nothing in the input parameter and no change in the return type. So that's what defines a function overriding. For more information of what function overriding is, there's going to be a card on the top right corner. So it's about function overriding. So you could check that out. So now what we do here is we're going to say to that Pokemon. So we say what what is the attack? So I ask the user, what is the attack for the Pokemon? And I would basically want to input some kind of attack. So what I do here is basically define a string. I would call it as attack. And then what I would do, instead of cin, because I know it's not going to be included with spaces, I would use the getLine function. So the getLine, and I would say cin, and now I will put attack inside of this. And now what I would do is prompt out that Infernape, and then we put a comma here, use, and then we say the attack name, and then there's going to be the exclamation mark, and then the end line here. So this is what's done in the void attack. This is my derived class, and this is now gonna work. So what I do here is I save the code. Now I name my code as code 21, and what I do in the main logic is now create an object. So how am I gonna create an object is I'm gonna name it as Infernape, and I'm gonna say as I1. And then when I'm do I1 dot, and now we see that two functions are included. So I just click any one of mine, and I would just put a semicolon at the end. I would save this code, and I would try to run this. Now what I'm gonna have is that this pure virtual function is gonna be overridden, and this one is gonna work. So in this case, instead of having this function, we'll have this one, and this is gonna work for us. And this is basically a pure, like some kind of empty container which we don't even care about, because if we want to create more Pokemon, we have specific attacks. But what a Pokemon class does is just basically a skeleton for other Pokemon. It's just and they're not going to get instantiated. So what I do is execute, compile, and run, and you would see that the compiler will show what is the attack. And I would say something like Fire Blast. So let's see, Fire Blast, and now Infernape use Fire Blast. So this is my mini program what I wrote. Now what I gotta do is basically I want to show you that is it possible to instantiate a pure virtual function which is defined in an abstract class. So this base class, also known as an abstract class, and what I want to do here is I want to prove you that we are not allowed to instantiate any of that. So what I do here is first I would just comment this code. I would do control and /, and over here in the beginning I would make that Pokemon class, and I would make as a P1 over here, and then I would do P1 dot. Okay, even before that, even if I try to instantiate this, they're gonna give me an error, and it would say something cannot declare variable P1 to be of abstract type Pokemon. So I'm not allowed to do it because this is an abstract class. You're not allowed to do that. So I would have to delete this. And same case goes for here. If I have nothing that is defined in my, basically if I have nothing overridden here in my derived class, this class, which is Infernape, which is getting inherited by the Pokemon class, is also going to be defined as an abstract class. So if I basically write something like, if I uncomment this code now, I would get an error now, and I won't get the thing that is right. So basically if I delete this and I would delete this, I would save this code and I would try to execute this, but now it says cannot declare variable I1 to be of abstract type Infernape. Now the compiler is saying that this is also known as an abstract. So both are abstract now. And I don't want this to happen, so I would have to make this uncommented, and I would also now save my code and try to execute, compile, and run. And then we have it working flawlessly. So what is over here is basically one derived class. For instance, if I have another derived class, and I would call it as class, let me say we have some Pokemon named as Lucario. So Lucario, and I would publicly inherit it from my Pokemon abstract class. So now what I would do is I would go in the public section. There's a typo here, and I would go and make a void attack. So void attack, and I would put this, and as well I would put that. So now what I would do is I would just copy this same exact code, but I would just modify a bit. So I would copy this, I would copy with Control C, and I would paste it with Control V. And now what I would do here, what is the attack? The string will be attack. It would go over here, and instead of Infernape, the Pokemon's name is Lucario, so I would change it to Lucario, use attack, and that's it. So what's going to happen here is now we could also create another object through Lucario's class, so Lucario L1, and then we'd say L1 dot attack, and this will also work. So I would just comment out this code, and let me forward this code. So save this, execute, compile, and run. And now you can see what is the attack. I would say aura sphere. And then it says Lucario use aura sphere. So that was a Lucario's attack. And now you can see that I cannot instantiate if I comment out this void class if I don't apply what you call function overriding into these. And they're also going to be known as abstract classes. And other thing here is that when I'm defining my virtual void attack function, which is a pure virtual function, if I did not override it with the same exact thing, for instance, if I have something like over here, I basically put something like an integer parameter. This is not defined as a function overriding, but it would be defined as function overloading, and that is basically different from a function overriding, and this won't work. So execute, compile, and run. The compiler will throw an error. It would say that this is not function overriding. So I would just have to delete this and leave it as it is. So execute, compile, and run. And then we have the function run. So that was it with this program, and that was it with this video. I would see you in the next one. Okay, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, peace out.